I need to start this episode by saying that rookie evaluations is the weakest point in my fantasy football game. Not that, or basically saying that nobody should listen to any advice that I say, but I'm just going to give my opinion on any of the rookies that we talk about. I don't watch college football really, so it's kind of one of those things that just bypasses. I kind of just take everybody else's information, see who I think is bullshitting, and take a look maybe a little bit myself after that. But might be in a world of trouble this episode.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to second that one with you, Jason, because I watch literally zero rookie in college football. I don't watch the combine. I just see what Twitter says and get things like the Orange Reports or the Graduates or things like from all those draft guides that people put out because that's not something I have time to do or even could even if I watched the film I wouldn't know what I was watching for. So that's not my deal.
Bobby, how are you with the rookies?
So you guys pretty much nailed how I am too. It's not like I'm a rookie specialist. The only reason that I knew more about this class this year was because the Giants had a number 2 pick and because I was waiting to go back to business school. So I went, you know what, maybe I'll watch some clips on YouTube just to have an idea of what's going on. And then really I just took the wisdom of quote unquote the people in the room and the crowd on Twitter and formed my own opinions based on that.
So I guess since it's right there, what do you think of the Giants' number 2 pick?
Yeah, I had a feeling this was coming.
Bobby hates Saquon Barkley, didn't you hear?
So, all right, here it is. When the pick happened, and this was off camera, I told Sam, like, I'm going to die if the pick happened. So I had to live up to my word that I was going to, like, faint or die on camera. But I really like Saquon Barkley. I do think he is a very good running back. The Giants like to be a ground and pound team. He's a new dad. Congratulations to him. But the thing I've been arguing about with people on Twitter, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, is this can be he could turn into a great running back, and it would still be a terrible pick for the Giants. And the reason why is they're paying him already guaranteed like the 4th or 5th most money of any running back in the league. It's a good deal for a quarterback because I think someone posted today Baker Mayfield's contract is like the 25th most on average for a quarterback. But you're paying a guy like he's already a god among men, and he might be. But if he misses, the Giants just have set themselves back really far. And then Gettleman miming analytics didn't help, saying that he didn't listen to any offers for the pick whatsoever. Just showed that he's just as arrogant as he was in Carolina.
So this contract thing is new to me. So basically, a running back, after your rookie contract is over, you're getting paid less money.
So the way the rookie wage scale works is that depending on where you're picked in the draft, you get a certain contract. And so because Saquon Barkley was the pick at number 2, he gets the number 2 pick contract.
Right.
And
didn't even think about that.
Contract is worth way more than pretty much any running back in the entire league is getting, except Le'Veon Bell. There we go. I can pronounce things. And he's not Bell yet. I know everyone thinks he's like a godsend and he's going to be this generational talent, and I really hope that he is. But you're paying him as if he's already Bell, and he's not. Right. Whereas if they did that for Josh Rosen or well, really, I just wanted Josh Rosen, so that's all
I was going to say.
If they did that
or
for
nobody
Josh
else,
Rosen,
that's it.
It makes sense because you build your team around the fact that you have a rookie quarterback on a cheap contract instead of a running back that's on a ridiculous contract and makes team building ridiculously hard. So there you go.
It's interesting you say that because I was also new to how the scales worked, and I still don't fully understand it even from that explanation. But like, I was listening to the Dynasty Trade Calculator podcast that they just did recently, talking about the rookies, and Izzy read out this scouting profile.
Yeah, I've heard about this. I haven't listened yet.
Yeah, and like it's basically he reads it out, and Waylon's like, yeah, like that's spot on about Barkley, and he's like, that was actually about Reggie Bush from 2010 or whatever like that, but it was almost the exact same thing. So mind you, the differences being like they're basically their college production in their senior year and their scouting profile is almost identical. The difference being Barkley is 32 pounds heavier or something like
Mhm.
that. So that gives him what you would theoretically an edge, and that he'll last longer, won't have the injury issues that Bush had and whatnot. But like he could become just a Reggie Bush type thing, which is not bad, but he's not the greatest running back ever.
I will go out on a limb and say that if he becomes Reggie Bush in any form, you can expect a video of me shower crying.
I hope you're a never nude and you can be in the shower just like.
Oh yeah, I will 100% get jorts just for that video.
Yeah, that's worth it.
Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Gut Feeling Podcast. My name is Jason. With me is Derek. What's going on, Derek?
Things are going really well. Summer's starting. It's been a bit of a layoff here, and I'm happy to have a little pop-up episode here, joined by a great guest in Bobby. And rookie season's getting kicked off. I'm in a few auctions right now, 2 that I'm really participating in, and 2 that I have no money in for rookie drafts. But yeah, how's it going? Like I said, we're here with Bobby Koch, Wrecked Fantasy on Twitter. How you doing, Bobby?
Yeah, I'm doing well, and I think I'm contractually obligated at this point to call myself a Twitter tough guy. Like John worked it out that I have to plug myself as that in every podcast I'm on. But doing well. I'm not in any rookie drafts yet, which is kind of surprising. But a lot of my leagues are run by my friend Zach, who's going to be the best man at my wedding, and I guess he's trying to be nice because he's saying that we're not going to draft until I'm back from my honeymoon.
Nice.
Even though some of the leagues, I don't even have picks. I was like, dude, you can do it. I'm not trading for picks. It's fine. But he refuses. So that's kind of nice. But
you say that now, but you don't know what's going to happen during the draft. Like if you see a guy start to fall pretty far, you're like, maybe I will trade him.
Yeah, that's fair. And I do think I have the kitchen sink and DLF staff league drafts coming up soon. So hopefully I'll get in some because mocks are one thing, but the real thing is what everyone lives for.
Well, kitchen sink, you'll have some auctions because you'll have rookie auction, Devy auction, free agent auction, stuff like that, probably.
Yeah, we had the RFA one. I was bummed to not win Rashard Matthews. I thought everyone undervalued him and that I was just the smartest in the room, and clearly I wasn't.
Well, if you're in kitchen sinko, right? So that's like the epitome of all the kitchen sink leagues with a ton of writers and sharks, right?
Yeah, it's sharks on sharks on sharks is my understanding. I'm glad I have a co-owner because at first I had no idea what I was doing. I've never played in a contract league or an auction league until that point. Ryan just said, "Oh, you'll be fine.
You'll figure it out. Don't worry."
Kitchen Sink is a pretty complex league. I was until recently in Kitchen Sink 4, and they're pretty intense leagues. Not for the faint of heart.
No, I explained it to my co-host Sam, who came over one day while I was doing the auction for Kitchen Sink, and he just went, "Dude, it's like you're actually a GM." I'm like, "I know, isn't that awesome?" He's like, "No, that's way too much work."
Yeah, exactly. Playing fantasy football, not real football. The contract leagues are tough, man. Those are probably the toughest ones that I play, and it's just, I don't know, something about it that I just struggle to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you because I think like Dynasty, you should be able to keep people forever. So the idea that there's a limited time window and you have to think about that definitely changes how you think and value players.
Okay, so for tonight, Jason has actually, for once, put me in charge of running the show for the most part.
Yeah,
so
I like this role.
You can probably expect the greatest show that we've ever produced.
Probably not wrong.
And despite our disclaimers of all of us having literally zero acumen in scouting rookies, we're going to talk all about rookies mostly. So we're going to start with like a lot of this stuff is the stuff that a lot of people are covering, but I just want to talk about it anyway with you guys to get your opinions. So first, we're going to start off with Chubb in Cleveland. So what does everybody think that? What do we think he's going to do? Is he going to beat out Carlos Hyde? Are they going to go with what Jacob Rickrod says in Todd Haley's offense, where he likes to run 3 running backs? You got Chubb, Hyde, and Duke Johnson there. Like, what do you expect from them, Bobby?
Yeah, I like
Nice.
Chubb a lot. I liked Chubb before the draft, and I like Chubb after the draft. So we do this weird thing every year, it seems like now, where we get on board the Browns and then they find a way to tank, and everyone keeps warning me about that. But their offensive pieces are really good. The O line's really good. I love Baker Mayfield. So maybe not necessarily this year, because I do worry a little bit about Carlos Hyde, but he could be traded still. But long term, I'm all aboard the Chubb train. I have a friend, I don't know if you guys talked to him too, but Pete Lawrence, he's at Pete Law on Twitter. He likes to say that he has Chubb for Chubb. And then there's also Wubba Lubba Chub Chub, which was a Gabe Gearing creation. So I'm on
That sounds
both
right.
those hashtags.
And Jason, what do you think about Chubb there?
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because, I mean, just signing Hyde and then thinking that they're just going to trade him right now it's a crazy feeling to me. And so my instincts right now say that they're going to run all three of them because I mean Duke is good, so they have no reason, unless someone's going to give up something crazy for him. There's no reason that any of those guys should be traded. So it's a weird backfield that maybe I'll just avoid, I guess, because if it's all three of them splitting, that's a disaster waiting to happen for somebody.
Yeah, I think that it's tough. It is probably one to avoid, maybe for the 2018 season. I think after that,
Yeah.
Hyde is pretty cuttable. They'll probably move on from him. And I had a thought just today as I was listening to that DTC podcast. Um, Izzy mentioned that it's kind of similar to when the Saints signed Adrian Peterson last year. Hyde's obviously not as old and whatnot, but
And also not as bad at this point in his career.
and not as bad. Although there are a lot of people that think Hyde is absolutely terrible and you should just avoid him at all costs. I'm not one of those people, but I kind of wonder if maybe the Browns went into this thinking like we want Chubb, but we want someone as insurance if his knee can't hold up because he had a devastating injury in college. And Haley does like to run three running backs, so maybe they went into it this year thinking, okay, we want to try and get Chubb in the draft. We're going to get Hyde as kind of insurance in free agency. We're going to keep Duke Johnson because he's a great pass catcher and change of pace back. And we're going to run all three of them. But then if Chubb is healthy and what he is, he'll be our future guy. And I think that like you maybe have to temper your expectations this year for Chubb, but like going forward, as long as he holds up and his knee is healthy, I think he's going to be a superstar. And then to your point, Bobby, I'm talking about how everybody talks up the Browns every year, and then they find a way to choke it out. It's kind of the same thing or analogous to Jacksonville for the last few years. It's the flip side of things because they are the defensive side of the ball that has been fantastic, and they had great drafts and loaded up on that side of it. And then all of a sudden they just had enough of an offense that was functional to get to the championship game, right?
I don't like how you're disparaging Blake Bortles right now.
I know
Blake
you
Bortles.
have love for
Come on.
Bortles, but we're not talking about Bortles right now. This is this is not
Forever
reality.
again.
That's only when Gabe and J Mike are on and they're the Jacksonville homers that we got to focus on that stuff. But but like they had a functional offense. They had a great defense. Cleveland's the opposite side. They have great offense on paper anyway. If they can just put it all together with Hugh Jackson, or despite Hugh Jackson, maybe.
I heard today from one of my Browns friends, and maybe this is not true or not, but he told me that essentially Hugh has no control over the offense this year.
I hope that's the case.
That it's all the Todd Haley show essentially, and Hugh's more or less a figurehead.
Yeah, he shouldn't have control over anything.
Yeah,
he really shouldn't even be the head coach. Like he shouldn't be the head coach.
He's the head coach because they fired their other head coaches very hastily. And so they now have a legitimate reason to fire Hugh, but didn't want to have a reputation for being too quick to pull the trigger on firing head coaches.
I kind of like that theory.
Yeah, that's a good theory. But then they went and fired the GM that basically got them or was getting them into the position to do what they're doing.
got them. He got them there.
Yeah, he got them there.
Yeah, I know some of my other Browns fans' friends will say that they're not the biggest Sashi guy because he passed on Carson Wentz, but Sashi definitely put them in a good position to succeed this year.
Well, there's tons of people that look at, oh, they passed on Carson Wentz, they passed on Deshaun Watson, all of these things, but I've thought about this different times when I've listened to podcasts that have mentioned that, or read people saying on Twitter or articles that have said that. And there's kind of different ways to look at this, because there's some teams that are building up all the pieces around them, having a bunch of offensive weapons, having a bunch of defensive pieces to have a good team, and then they draft their quarterback of the future, or the quarterback for years. And then there's teams like the Giants and the Jets that need quarterbacks and have tons of holes everywhere else, but they could have approached it. They could have approached it by drafting a whole bunch of other positions and building long term, and then getting the quarterback when their team's ready. Whereas, like the Jets took Darnold this year, and they have a bunch of kind of mediocre pieces around them. The Giants
hired Gettleman.
Yeah, the Giants hired Gettleman. Yeah, so there's different ways to do it. Just the same ways in fantasy, there's multiple strategies to win. Like there's teams take different approaches. They were taking the approach of, let's get the team, an awesome team and awesome offensive pieces around, or just around a quarterback, and then draft the quarterback when we're ready to hopefully compete.
Yeah, and the thing people are forgetting too, and I only know this because I read a ton, is that at the time, Carson Wentz in his draft class was considered like the Josh Allen of his draft class. Like the way people hear Josh Allen's name now and throw up a little bit in their mouth, that's how it was with Carson Wentz.
Yeah. Although that mainly because Wentz was from like South Dakota State, like he's from a small school.
Yeah, pretty much, I think. But there are some other comparisons, but that's just what I'm told, because honestly, I didn't pay as much attention as I did to this year's draft class. But it is something to keep in mind that, yes, he did pass on him, but if they did think of him as like a Josh Allen type, it makes sense that they passed on him.
Yeah, like looking at it from an analytic perspective, they've looked at all those numbers and stuff, and that totally makes sense why Brown would have done that. But at the same time, like that's to say, like scouts aren't always right, and nobody's always right. So like you can miss on somebody.
I also understand as a Browns fan being mad that you don't have Carson Wentz on your team.
Yeah, that's true.
So on the topic of
Nick Foles.
Exactly. On the topic of quarterbacks, Bobby, I have to commend you because I was stalking your Twitter today to see what you're up to lately. And I saw a conversation between you and somebody in the last couple days about Matt Stafford and Alex Smith and Eli Manning, about people being busts. Like, I think you were talking about Baker, maybe.
I was talking to my friend James Catulas, who is one of the Superflex guys, about Baker Mayfield. And I asked him what he would define a bust as, because he's saying Baker is going to bust, and I don't agree.
Right. And I have to commend you because he said something that really like bothered me in that conversation. And he said that Eli, Stafford, and Alex Smith are all busts, but Cam is not, because he's a top 10 quarterback in his eyes.
Yeah.
But hasn't Matt Stafford been a top 10 quarterback for like the last decade consistently?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much.
That's in fantasy. So I mean, I wouldn't call him a bust there, but I don't think he's a real NFL bust either. I mean, he's good. It's just the team has always been.
It translates over, because fantasy numbers are, I think sometimes people forget this, but their fantasy numbers are real numbers. It's not like we're just making up numbers and then going, oh yeah, you get a point because you had the most stylish throw. It's you made this pass, the receiver caught it, and they get a point for that. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily work exactly where if you're good in fantasy, you're good in real life. But generally speaking, if you're good in fantasy, you're good in real life. And my whole problem with what James said, besides that, is just that if you're telling me that I'm spending my first or second pick on a guy and he's going to be the face of my franchise and at least a decent to above average quarterback for at least 4 or 5 seasons, I'll be thrilled. If they're 10 seasons like Eli or Alex Smith or Stafford, I'm beyond happy.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Alex Smith guy. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but for as long as he's been in the NFL and he is consistently a starter, I mean, like, okay, I'll take that. I mean, as a Bears fan who gets a rotating quarterback every other year, I mean, besides the little Jay Cutler area, but yeah, I mean, I'm fine with spending a draft pick who's there. I mean, it's not like those guys are losing a ton of games. Like,
Yeah.
I think somebody mentioned Tyrod in that conversation somewhere, and they're like, "Is he considered a bust or whatever?" I'm like, I mean, they were winning games kind of, but it wasn't because of him, and he was only a starter for a short period of time. So I mean, I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah, and as a Bears fan, I feel like you should appreciate, at least hopefully, Mitchell Trubisky. I'm very high on him.
Yeah.
I think he's a good guy.
After the initial shock of what they did wore off, I was like, you know what? We haven't had a quarterback taken this high before. I'm not just gonna write him off. Hopefully he's great because we've never seen that here. So yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I'm excited for what the Bears have done. I think they killed the draft. Maybe that's a little fan bias, but they got everything they pretty much got everything I wanted them to get besides a cornerback. Which,
if you ask me, the Bears
okay.
have had the best offseason of any team, period.
Right. I think that, but I don't know if that's my bias or not.
Well, and
Derek, what do you think?
I've heard Matt Price say something similar, not about the whole offseason, but if you do combine it the whole way, you can look at the signings that they made with like A-Rob and Gabriel and just getting the head coach they got, and then their draft, like Matt Price said that he felt that the Bears had the best draft of any team as well. So like I don't think that you're being totally fan biased on that one, Jason. I don't understand the defensive side of the ball well enough to know what they've done there, but like the offensive pieces they got, like Anthony Miller, I think there's lots of people that valued him as one of the top receivers in this class, and sure, there's lots of people that also said there are no wide receiver ones in this class; they're all wide receiver twos, but they signed Allen Robinson, which people think should be the wide receiver one. So if you've got Anthony Miller to complement him, then you've got Gabriel to stretch the field.
Don't forget about Trey Burton.
Well, yeah, so I hadn't even got to him yet. So you've got Jordan Howard running the ball between the tackles. You've got Tariq Cohen that you can do tons of stuff with. And you've got Trey Burton there now. And lots of people were big fans of Adam Shaheen before they signed Trey Burton. So they've got tons of offensive weapons there. And their defense was, I think, already okay, at least. Jason, you can probably speak to this better than I can.
Yeah, they were solid.
So like they've got an okay defense, and I think they added some pieces in the draft that will help that. So they really do. They look like they could be this year's version of the Rams. Who knows if it'll be that extensive to make the playoffs and be as good as they were, but it looks that way with a second-year quarterback, a ton of offensive pieces, some free agent signings, and a good draft. They really could be, and they've got a tough division though, with the Packers and the Vikings being in there. And to your point about, you were talking about Stafford and the question of whether or not he's a bust, like I don't think he's a bust by any means. I think that the franchise is just not very good, and their team is not very good and managed well. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the Bears can be really, really good this year, and certainly in the fight for the division or a wild card spot. So.
Playoffs? What the? I'm excited. I'm excited, but I'm still skeptical.
Playoffs right after Goff did it, and follow kind of a similar path that Goff did.
Yeah, I really think they could.
I'd be okay with it.
I'm not saying fan base would be okay with playoffs.
I'm still skeptical. Maybe 8 wins. I'm happy with 8 wins this year.
Well, and like all you want to see is improvement, right? Like it's not like you want to turn around and expect the Super Bowl, but you want to see improvement, and it looks like they're making the right moves.
Yeah, well, they can't get much worse.
To be honest, I think I actually want to see disimprovement. I want the Giants to get like 0 wins, so Gettleman just gets fired right after the season.
Are you researching the quarterbacks for next year's draft yet, or how does that work?
They're not particularly good, at least as of yet. So it wouldn't really help us, but it would just make me feel better if he lost his job.
Right. Maybe they can get a free agent quarterback instead or something.
The only notable free agent quarterback was signed today. So I looked this up because I was curious of, oh man, if the Giants really screwed the pooch on this, who could they at least sign? And Matt Ryan was supposed to be a free agent
Oh
next
my
season.
God.
And
Isn't that a crazy contract?
Yeah, I don't understand it, but I mean,
For
I
Matt
do,
Ryan?
because it's all about timing. So like, if Aaron Rodgers was supposed to be a free agent next year, he'd be making even more than that. But it's still ridiculous that Matt Ryan is the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Not quite as ridiculous as when Joe Flacco was the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, though.
I read today that the Packers thought that they were close to a contract with Aaron Rodgers too. I just imagine their ownership.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I just imagine their ownership after seeing that, just like throwing their papers in the air and be like, "What the?"
It's perfect for that gift that the guy's like, "Fucking, I'm out of here."
Right.
Throws him up, and it's like, "Just kidding, it's Thursday. I still need these."
Right, exactly. Because I mean, what Aaron Rodgers gets an extra $2 million a year on top of that, maybe more. How much more could they possibly give him?
Well, how old is A-Rod right now? He's like 32, 33?
34 maybe?
I think he's about 34. He's early to mid 30s.
So you figure he has like what, few seasons left, maybe like 3 or 4, maybe 5.
Wow, if you look at like Breeze and Brady, they're 38 to 40 years. Like Rodgers could have another 5 to 6 years in them.
He probably will, just because he doesn't want to lose to, like, all of them are going to keep playing until they're like 60, because they're like, I don't want to be the guy to not play while Brady's still playing, or I don't want to be the guy to not play while Breeze is still playing. And then they'll just play when they like are getting around on a walker, pretty much.
Right. Well, I mean, a big thing of the Aaron Rodgers or the Matt Ryan contract is that it's $100 million guaranteed. So all Rodgers has to do is, make sure that the guaranteed money is there. I mean, he only has to play then 3 more years after that, or something.
So he just has to keep breathing. Is pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
You could pull a Jason Witten and get his contract restructured, and then go, oh, actually, I'm retiring for the booth, and they're going to pay me double money.
Right.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Now I'm curious to see what Rodgers gets, but it just makes that rookie window so huge now. Like, if you can find one of those rookie quarterbacks to win right now, it's just amazing. Giants,
you got to make sure that
probably.
Yeah, I was about to say, you got to make sure that Gettleman listens to this podcast so he understands what he did wrong.
Well, okay. Like, just before we wrap this up on getting on John Bosching this episode, let's I have one question for you, Bobby. So you said the only notable free agent. Let's say take all the anthem kneeling aside. What if the Giants signed Colin Kaepernick?
I wouldn't be mad about it. Well, I'd be mad, but not for political reasons, because I don't care if people kneel for the anthem. I'm just putting that out there. If you have a problem with people kneeling for the anthem, you probably need a bit more of a life. That's just my take.
It's something so weird to be so mad about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't have a problem with that. I would have a problem with the fact that he's been out of football for 2 or 3 years and probably can't play anymore. But if you're telling me we get Kaepernick, 2 seasons ago, I'd be okay with at least giving him a shot.
Sure. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next topic here. So, I put this one as the sheet as well. The real Ronald Jones, please stand up. So this one is, again, I honestly have no idea what to do with Ronald Jones, because pre-draft he was mocked, and ADP was somewhere in the 106 to 108 range all the time, and then he has arguably one of the best landing spots of the draft in terms of competition, and people are still talking about how, well, I hate to take him here, but he's now like in the 102 to 105 conversation. Where do you have him, Bobby? What do you do with Ronald Jones?
That's an interesting question, because I think a lot of what happened is the landing spots in the draft, even though there are something like 6 or 7 running backs that can come in right away and take starter jobs, it seems like everybody doesn't really like the landing spots, and I kind of get it. Ronald Jones is one of the few who ended up in a landing spot that everyone liked. However, he's also kind of undersized, and I think that's the main knocker issue I've heard against him. I have him as my RB5 in my rankings after Barkley, Geis, Chubb, and Penny, actually. So I'd take him towards the end of the first, but I doubt that I'm going to get him there because I think most people are taking him like 103, 104.
Jason, where are you on Jones?
Yeah, it's the landing spot that's just huge, I guess, for me. It might depend on how my team is structured right now. Like if I'm in a win now situation, I think I'd take Jones over like Chubb. But man, that's tough. He's probably in that range. I mean, I would say he's probably at 104 or 105, like you said. Depends on if you have any wide receivers above him. But we're all back to being running back crazy now, aren't we?
Yeah, after last year's class. Also, that's a good point where I look at rookie picks often, whether this is right or wrong, and it does depend on my situation, but I look at them from a value perspective. So I think which of these guys is the most likely to retain their value into next season if they have a poor rookie season. And so, for example, if it's between Chubb or Jones for me, I pick Chubb because I think Chubb has the body to be a starting running back. He's in a great situation. While he might not produce year one, year two, he's probably going to get a ton of hype when Carlos Hyde goes away.
Right. Hopefully your rookie running backs aren't starting for you, so you can not worry about that. But after those bastards last year, now we all want to make sure we can start them.
Yeah. So a couple things on that, so the tough part with Jones and the thing that I really don't understand is like, okay, first off, obviously the landing spot is he has probably the best landing spot and has the easiest path to getting sheer volume, and we all know that volume means production in fantasy points. But he is not really a receiving back, or at least his college production doesn't suggest that he's a receiving back, as per everything I've listened to. They do have Charles Sims, Peyton Barber, Jaquiz Rogers there as potential competition, so nothing threatening. Yet the thing that I don't understand about him is he was a first-round rookie pick, yet everybody seemed to hate him, and I don't really understand. Again, like I don't watch the film, I don't know what the deal is, but everybody's like, oh, he's a first-round guy, but I hate taking him. Like I think every time I listen to Dynasty Blueprint and they did a mock, Matt Williamson is like, oh, I got to take Jones again at 106. I hate this guy, but I'm taking him. It's like, well, why is he a first-round pick then? I don't understand. Like,
it's the size thing people are worried about, like Bobby said.
Just size? Is it just size?
I think it is, to be honest with you.
And then, he had pretty good college production. He didn't have the greatest combine, but he also was injured during the combine. So he has, it basically depends on whether you like Jones or not. If you like Jones, then you wouldn't call it an excuse. You just say he's injured, so he can't perform up to standards. And if you don't like Jones, everyone says, oh, it's just an excuse and he had a poor combine and he's undersized and all this stuff. But I'm probably somewhere in the middle.
He's super young too, isn't he? Like, are people worried about his age? I think he's only 20.
Isn't age Twitter usually all about like, oh, he's young, he's great?
Yeah, but I don't know. Maybe it's when you're running back, you're young and you're still a kid or something. You're not grown man size.
No,
I don't know.
I think Nick Whalen did want young running backs because when you think about it, if you're young, it means you don't have any tread on the tire, right?
Right. Run him down to the ground like Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah, exactly.
Nick Whalen did say on the DGC podcast that Jones is his 102 right now after Barkley. So
that's gotta be a landing situation based. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's part of that. Plus, he also absolutely hates Geis. So
yeah,
Geis was his 108. So,
and
I think Jones is in a better situation than Geis is.
Yeah, I think so too. Although
Geis is still going to get volume. But at the same time, I'd say situation should impact your ranking, but your pre-draft rankings do matter a bit, and I feel like sometimes people just toss them out the window entirely when situation happens. It all depends too. Like,
well, it's balancing both.
Yeah, like I'm guessing you guys had. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce his name, but EQSB rated pretty high.
Don't even get me started.
And then he fell as far as he did, and now you'd have to be kind of a little dumb to not drop him down your rankings at least decently.
Well, there was 3 other receivers drafted to his same team ahead
Yeah,
of him. So
exactly.
or maybe only 2, but still other receivers ahead of him. So.
That's one of those guys where I just see that Dynasty Twitter is just so in love with him, and then when he gets picked in the 6th round, like in the situation he's in, just give up, tap out at that point. Jeff Janis all over again is what I think I said in Pigs 3 chat.
Certainly has that potential.
Right?
You did say
it's
that.
The same situation. There's nothing. I mean, like I said, they're not the same player, but it's the same situation. What is he going to do?
Okay, just real quick before we move on to the next thing, I wanted to touch on one thing that Bobby had said. He talked about like when you're doing these drafts and you want to look at the guys who are going to retain value. I think it was Josh Hermsmeyer, Frisco Josh on Twitter. He was talking about, or I might be maybe getting this wrong, but I think he put out something about value of rookie picks and running backs over a couple of years post draft, that all of them have increased in value except for 3, like Amir Abdullah and a couple. I don't know what the other backs were, like from their pre-draft ADP.
Amir.
Yeah, pre-draft ADP. I think there was only 3 running backs who had lower ADPs at peak value or something, um, as compared to their pre-draft. And then wide receivers, there was I don't know, it was like a 50-50 split or something like that. So to your point, even though right now we're at a major shift of running back over wide receiver because of the last couple of running back classes have been much more strong compared to wide receiver, it seems like investing a higher pick in a running back in a fantasy rookie draft is actually better in terms of sustained long-term value.
Yeah,
While
Kyle Lebrecht had similar charts of the dynasty dummies, and he showed me them the other day because I thought it was the opposite. I thought wide
Yeah, that seems weird to me.
retain their value longer.
well, and maybe long term, and that everybody looks at it as like wide receivers, yeah, long term because they don't take as much punishment. They're long term investment. They're going to retain their value longer, and that's maybe true over a 7-year sample or something. But over the first like few years post, like running backs tend to they get volume, especially if they have a higher draft pick, NFL wise invested in them. They get volume right away. They get more of a chance to succeed, and then they maybe fall off quicker. But so you have a shorter window with them, but their value actually increases generally. But
Kind of makes sense when you think about it because they are more likely, I think, to get chances to produce in their rookie season than a rookie wide receiver generally is. Because a rookie wide receiver is generally like the 3rd guy on his team's depth chart, whereas the rookie running back often has a chance to be the starter, if not the pass catching specialist. So just by the ability to show things on the field, I guess their value is retained. That's just my hypothesis.
Yeah, it actually makes sense now that we think about it because, I mean, the rookie running backs, kind of like we touched on, you want to use them when they're young, don't have all those miles. So it makes sense, I guess. Run them real quick.
All right, okay. Moving on to the next topic, I want to keep on the idea of rookies here. So JJ Zacharyson, I remember him last year for Kareem Hunt. He talked about looking at the draft, and he actually just recently had a podcast on the Late Round QB podcast talking about how you have to look at what teams did. And if they trade up to get somebody, that means they really like them. And now there's a difference between them trading up and making a stupid pick, like potentially the Seahawks might have with Rashad Penny, and trading up because maybe they see something that nobody else sees in a guy. So the Chiefs last year traded up, took Kareem Hunt, and then yes, it did take an injury to Spencer Ware to maybe help him realize his full potential, but there was 2 teams this year, maybe even I might have been missing 3 if the Broncos traded up for Freeman, but so the Seahawks traded up and got Rashad Penny. The Lions traded up and got Kerryon Johnson. And maybe the Broncos traded up and got Royce Freeman. Are any of those guys people that you should look at and say like they see something that they really wanted that guy, they traded up and got them. Those are guys that I really need to go and get. Because those teams maybe see something that we don't. Bobby, I'll start with you. You look like you're really thinking on this one.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was a Royce Freeman guy, and this is credit to I know I keep name dropping, but this is credit to DFF Shane Manila, who I was too low on Freeman, and then he like linked me a bunch of stuff, and I read it and watched some stuff and went, oh yeah, I'm way too low on this guy. So I like that fit for the Broncos a lot. Can't recall if they traded up or not. If you say they did, I take your word for it.
Well, no, I was a bit sketchy on it, and I was thinking about it as I was doing gymnastics with the kids earlier today, and trying to figure out what was going on. And I want because I knew I had put this on the sheets, and I couldn't remember if they traded it up or not. Jason, do you remember, or do you know?
I was just trying to find it, but I don't remember either. It sounds right, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, it does sound right. We'll just go with
for
it.
sure that Penny and Johnson got traded up to get, and then Freeman.
Yeah, Johnson's one I can definitely touch on and say that him being traded up for does not make me more interested in him. And the reason I say that is even though the Lions have a new coach, for the past X number of seasons, they've ranked pretty much dead last in the rush. And I know Patricia's a defensive guy, so he's going to make their defense a little better, and maybe they won't be in so many shootouts. But until the Lions can show me that I just won't buy into a Lions run game until they can show me they can have a run game. That's my gut feel. There's no real analysis behind it. They just need to show me first.
How do you feel about Amir Abdullah though? A serious question. I know it's a joke to me, but
yeah, I liked the talent before he had a Lisfranc in his foot, right?
Okay.
And then he came back from the injury and didn't look like quite the same guy, at least not to my not scout eye. It's just my to use your pod's name again, gut feeling he didn't look like the same guy. And
we encourage that on this podcast.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, I don't think the Lions gave him a fair chance. I kind of feel this is going to sound weird, and I just realized I feel this way, but I kind of feel the way about Amir Abdullah and the Lions that I did with Tyrod Taylor and the Bills, where they didn't really give him a fair shake. They didn't do anything to really encourage a run game. They didn't have an O-line. They never really tried running, so when they did try running, it was obvious, and the other teams just went, oh, cool, we'll just stack 8 in the box. All right, bye, Amir.
Well, yeah, and like to that point, I think I've seen Adam Spinks, the RB Scout on Twitter. I think he's posted different times that like a lot of his peripheral numbers, when you look at Amir, are actually pretty good. He was just used very ineffectively.
Yeah, sounds like Tyrod.
Yeah, maybe that's like I was an Amir truther. I'm not gonna lie about that. Maybe that's an excuse coming from me, and I just want to believe it. But the reason I mention it is mainly like it makes you think that like there's a lot of people that if they are drafted to a team that maybe doesn't have like sure okay if you go on a broader picture, ultimately if you're a transcendent talent, you're going to win out, but not everybody's a transcendent talent, and if you go to a situation that doesn't suit your style or you're not used appropriately, you can get squashed and not have a good career, and you peter out quicker than maybe you would than if you were in a different situation. Maybe you would have succeeded.
Situation and coaching talent matter. I mean, just look at Jared Goff under Jeff Fisher versus Jared Goff under McVay.
Well, and this is actually going to play into our next topic, but I do want to finish carry on. We hear Jason, you John botched us again on going on a tangent to Amir Abdullah when we were trying to talk about Kerryon Johnson and Penny. Either way, like the one thing about Detroit that I recently found out that's interesting, they've kind of quietly really improved their offensive line. They made some draft picks that were there. They made some.
They took Ragnow, right? Or am I making that up? I could have sworn I remember.
Yeah, I think they took Ragnow. They took was it a center? They took is that Ragnow a center?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So they took him and they traded for somebody or made a signing from Green Bay. I think that like they have improved their offensive line, so maybe they're willing to commit more to the run. They traded up for this running back. I don't know. Maybe it's something that I was thinking about. It's like maybe we need to look at this. And there were people I remember hearing on Twitter and different mock drafts that like Kerryon Johnson pre-draft was a sneaky late first person, early second, and then he gets traded up to get picked. Like he's maybe your 105 to 107 range.
Pre-draft, think I had him in the early second range or like mid-second range.
Yeah,
but that's
so,
in super flex, by the way. I should clarify. So it was pushed down a bit by the
okay.
quarterback.
So then he's definitely got to be more in a late first, in not super flex.
Well, if you're going off only my rankings, but yeah.
Right.
No, but
Should
like
be.
he was, yeah. Well, this is the Bobby Koch podcast, right? So yeah, like I think he's somebody who people had. There were some people who were fans of, but and I don't know what his holes in his game were really anything. I think I remember listening to Elliot Chris on the Draft Daily Pod talk about him and saying that he had some good, some very positives, but there were some holes to his game. But can't remember if he was a better in between the tackles runner versus receiver. But either way, like then transitioning to Penny in Seattle, like I think general consensus on him was Seattle are total idiots trading up to get him because they literally have zero offensive line. They basically made no moves in the draft or offseason.
And he can't pass block, so Russell Wilson
can't pass protect. So how does this make any sense? And
they
yet
also
they come
have
out and
no
say these are
defense, so they're going to need to
Right.
pass a lot.
They're in trouble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to like the Penny pick because I liked Penny before the draft, and I know like the Seahawks had Marshawn at one point, and he just dominated fantasy for everybody. But I just can't talk myself into liking Penny where he's going right now.
Well, yeah, because there's lots of people that are now putting him as a 102 because he was the second back taken in the draft and they traded up for him and all of those different factors. But there's and I can see how you can at least make the argument he's going to get volume, but I don't really see how you can make the argument that he's going to succeed with that volume unless you're in a point per carry league because he's going to get negative yardage all the time.
Yeah, and this might be terrible for the rest of the podcast if it's all about rookies, but I'm going to say it anyway, which is that basically if I had any pick that's not 101, unless it's super flex. If it's super flex, different answer. But let's assume it's one quarterback. If I had any pick that wasn't the 101, I'd be trying to trade out.
Yeah, that seems to
Sounds
be
right.
a lot of what I'm hearing right now. But and I think we'll actually on that note we'll wrap up our rookie talk because one last question on rookies before we transition to a couple other things. So my one thing was outside of Barkley, is there any one rookie that you're looking at that I must have this guy if I can try and trade up to get him, or is there somebody you're really targeting in your drafts?
So I'm probably going to regret saying this because, well, actually, no, this might come out after my rookie drafts. Who knows? But I really like Cortland Sutton, and it seems like people have fallen on Cortland Sutton because they are thinking only in terms of year one, where he has DT and Sanders ahead of him. And I'm thinking, okay, both DT and Sanders can be cut for basically nothing next year. And that means he can learn from DT and Sanders for a year. I really like what I saw from Case Keenum last year, and I think he's a legitimate quarterback now. So if I can get Sutton at the end of the first with everyone being down on him, I am all about that value pick right now. And I wish I had my rookie drafts right now because I keep seeing Sutton fall, and I'm just waiting for people to wisen up and go, wait a minute, he's going to be a starting receiver probably year two.
Jason?
Bobby took mine.
Yeah, did he?
I think Cortland Sutton is the answer there too. But just pulling up DLF ADP, this is May. It looks like my new guy, Anthony Miller, getting picked basically early second round. Only 2 wide receiver spots ahead of ESB is. That's
ESB still going that time?
Questionable. It shows him at number 9 wide receiver at 19.1.
That's gonna fall more. That's gonna fall more.
Yeah, they're doing mock drafts right now. That's what
I'm guessing that'll change, but I don't know. I think Miller is in a good spot this year just to even produce right away. But like I said, I think Sutton is the answer. I don't understand why DJ Moore just jumped ahead of everybody after basically all offseason. It was Sutton and Ridley.
I still like DJ Moore, but I definitely like the value on Sutton because everyone's talking about, oh, you have to go running back in the first round and let receivers fall. And I don't agree with putting all the running backs over a lot of the running backs, yeah, but all of them over Sutton, no.
Right.
I think the Sutton falling is that they don't see production year one.
Yep.
But I mean that's more a recency bias. Is that, like, again, the 2014 class ruined it for everybody. They want you to see production year one.
Right.
Got to hold on to that Laquan Treadwell hype.
Yeah, Sutton is set up to learn behind two of the best receivers in the game right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mind you, aging and declining, but still two of the best receivers.
They're probably still great teachers. I don't think your ability to teach how to do the skills necessarily declines, just your ability to actually do them.
Exactly, and he can learn some skills from them. And then when the Broncos probably inevitably cut them next year because their contracts don't make sense and they're a 1-15 team or something along those lines, and not a playoff team anyway.
The other thing is, and I know this offhand, I know I'm not supposed to bring stats in, and sorry to cut you off, Derek.
That's okay.
But it's DT and Sanders have combined for over 40% of the Broncos target share since 2015 at very minimum.
Wow.
So normally it's like in the 45 to 47% of the entire target share for the team. So if either of those guys were to disappear, suddenly there's going to be a huge amount of
Right.
targets for someone, and that someone's going to be Cortland Sutton, aka you should be drafting Cortland Sutton higher than you have been.
Yeah, I honestly, I think you've made a great pick there. I hadn't thought of him ahead of time, but like, yeah, he's 100% probably one of the great people to buy because people seem to be down on him, and the reasons he was your wide receiver 1 or 2 going into the draft are still there. He just may not see as much production until year 2 or 3, but like he's still going to be good.
Yeah, you might want to wait till after this season and then just buy him after he's disappointed in his rookie season. Or quote unquote,
he could be one of the guys that you could try and be like, hopefully people sour on him, like a potentially a Mike Williams type guy that maybe falls in the draft for whatever, or falls in value because they don't produce year one. And obviously Williams still remains to be seen if he can produce. But
hey, I'm gonna bosh us again real quick. What do you think you can get Corey Davis for right now in terms of rookie picks?
I hope the value is still high. I have at least a share too of Corey Davis, so I hope that it didn't die.
It seems like one of those guys, right? Where, I mean, obviously he was pretty much 101 for everybody last year, if I remember correctly. And then, he has not a good year, I would say. But is he still worth? Well, he's not obviously not worth the 101 now because it's worth gold. But could you trade the 102 for Corey Davis? And
I would trade the 102 for Davis pretty easily.
Are you forgetting the trade that you and I made, Jason? Is I gave you the 102 for Davis in the Bosch Supremacy League, like literally about a month ago.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
And I also am willing to make excuses for Corey Davis. Maybe it's kind of like how I was talking about earlier with Ronald Jones and being injured at the combine. Corey Davis had his hamstring injury, and then he had a quarterback that also had a hamstring injury. And so when you combine the two, if you're playing injured and your quarterback's injured, you're probably not going to produce very well. And towards the end of the season, he had flashes of plays, and thinking of at least one in the playoffs in particular that you looked at that and went, yeah, this guy can definitely play.
Yeah, and personally, I'm not as convinced that he's going to be the superstar wide receiver 1 that he was hyped up to be, but I see a lot of reasons to show that like you can make excuses or find reasons to say, well, that whole offense was terrible last year. So they didn't produce the way that they were expected. He was injured, so he didn't produce the way they expected as well in a bad offense. So that offense should be better this year. You would think they've got a new coaching staff, new personnel.
And Malarkey is almost as bad as Fisher. Not quite as bad, but almost as bad.
Yeah, so you can at least make an argument to see a way and rationalize that he will be better.
I will say I'm with you guys that I don't think he's a star number 1 guy, and I got in trouble for saying that the other day, kind of, because Jake tagged me in a tweet that Matt Harmon was talking about how great Corey Davis is going to be, and I said that I think Juju Smith-Schuster is much better, and then a bunch of people just started tweeting angry things at me.
This seems like an appropriate time for Jason to segue to whatever his pre-recording Juju Smith versus A-Rob question was. Do you remember, Jason, what that was?
Yeah, so I talked earlier about one of your tweets that I commended you on.
Yeah.
But then I also came across this other one that says, I would give Diggs for Juju with little to no hesitation.
Correct. I would.
And then you also said, I'd also take A-Rob for him, who most people have ranked higher.
Yep.
But then you said you picked A-Rob over Juju.
Yeah, so that was the tweet happened after I did that. I was in a mock draft for DLF, and I was at the third pick. I think it was 3.11 or something like that. And I had a choice. I already had Odell on my team, and I'm trying to remember who else I had at number 2. It's probably not great that this only happened like 2 days ago, and I already forget. But I had a choice, and my choice was either go A-Rob or Juju. And it was in the middle of the night, and I don't know why I was making this pick in the middle of the night, but I guess I felt bad about making people wait for me, and I woke up and saw I was on the clock. And there's just something in my head that said, I know you want to go Juju, but listen, man, you have to select A-Rob right now. So then I went, all right, voice in my head, I'm going to select A-Rob. And then I woke up in the morning and I went, why did I select A-Rob? So you can't always trust your gut feel, I guess.
I'll admit that I haven't read your Juju article yet. I know it just came out like the last couple days, right?
Yep.
So you don't have to explain everything that's in there, but what do you expect for Juju, like just this year, or why do you expect him to get to that wide receiver 1 area?
Okay, so I'm gonna try to go into as much detail as I can without giving away the entire article.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want you to do that because I want people to read it.
So the reason that I feel this way is there's a few historical reasons, and I'll list them real quick. One is there have been 2 players in the entire history of the NFL to have less than 90 targets, or maybe it was even 80 targets, and have a 900-yard season. Juju is one of them, and the other one I think was some Taylor, and he was like 34 when he did it, and Juju was 21, and doing it at 21 is much more impressive, obviously. Number 2 is that the Steelers have a very long history of passing the torch, as it were. So they went from Hines Ward to Santonio Holmes to Mike Wallace to Antonio Brown. The natural progression seems to be Antonio Brown to Juju Smith-Schuster. And then another thing is this idea that, and I'm not saying it's exactly equivalent, but I've heard the comparison thrown around that Juju is to Antonio Brown what Julio was to Roddy White. And in the 2 years that they both weren't injured anyway, that Julio played behind Roddy, Julio was the wide receiver 21 in PPR and the wide receiver 11, even though he was second in targets on that team. In his first season, Juju was wide receiver 21, I believe, exactly. Maybe I'm making that up. I feel like I remember that. But the one thing that was pointed out to me by Matt Harmon, which is true, is that Julio, even though he was the number 2 in targets, was getting much more targets per game than Juju. So what I see this season is, let's say Juju, and I showed some splits too, but let's say Juju were able to repeat his season he had last season, or even improve upon it. That's 2 seasons at a very young age where he'll have 900 plus yards and over 5 touchdowns and however many receptions. And at that point, people are going to start treating him like he's in the Michael Thomas range, because that's what happened to Michael Thomas. Michael Thomas had that one great season, and then he had another follow-up season. Suddenly, he's almost as expensive as Odell or Hopkins, or those guys are just a tier below. So my whole idea is, if I believe that this guy is going to do well in the future, I'm going to pay for him now, even though it's going to cost me an arm and a leg, because in the future it would cost me my entire body.
It doesn't bother you that Ben Roethlisberger's retiring after this season, the common denominator in all those wide receivers you listed?
No, because he wasn't actually the common denominator. That spans 20 plus years, and he wasn't playing for all of them.
How long did he play with Hines Ward? Isn't that who you started with?
It is harder to find a franchise quarterback I'm giving them credit for, and Ben was there for pretty much all of it. So I will say that it does concern me slightly, but not enough to scare me from what is my hottest fantasy take, which is that Juju Smith-Schuster will be an eventual first-round startup pick.
So my only counter to that is, what about, like, Roddy White petered out pretty quickly for Julio to jump up. What if Antonio Brown is Jerry Rice second coming and he plays for another 10 years?
Yeah, then I'm screwed, and I expect to hear it from everybody.
But that doesn't mean that Juju won't produce. That just
I don't think you're dead wrong.
No, I don't either.
There's enough hype around him that if he does, like you said, even put up the same season, he's going to bounce up there.
A lot of it has to do with age. So I think people think that Juju is going to come out and dominate everybody. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you have 2 seasons, so it's kind of like, the best example I can actually come up with right now is Amari Cooper before this past season. If you have 2 seasons at a very young age of 1,000+ yards and however many touchdowns, people are going to value you very highly, because they're going to go, oh my God, you're going to do this for the next 10 years on my team. I can't believe it. I'm getting such great value here. And when that happens back to back, suddenly you shoot up draft boards. So all I think Juju needs to do is have basically the same season he just did, or slightly improve upon it. And that, and the added fact, I will say this is a factor, not for me necessarily, but for everybody else, of everybody just loving Juju's personality, will make him fly up draft boards.
And while Jason is a Bears fan and should probably love A-Rob, I do not think that you're wrong taking Juju above A-Rob if you get the opportunity, although you did make the mistake of not doing it. Because I am a documented A-Rob hater, and I honestly think that Jason's probably right that Anthony Miller is the wide receiver 1 on that team.
I was kidding about Anthony Miller. I'm an Allen Robinson convertee. Yep. I hated him. I've always hated him. I always have, but now he's on the Bears, so
just like you said, Bobby, when you took him over Juju in that mock, you instantly regretted it. Like, we literally on this podcast had a discussion about how I made a trade that actually got a pretty good deal. I think I traded like Cameron Meredith and some other things, that maybe a first. I don't even know if it was a first, but Cameron Meredith and something else in the last offseason for A-Rob. And immediately I just wanted him off my roster because I didn't like him before that. I just was like, this seems like good value. I should do it.
I've got the trade right here. You gave up Mike Evans, Cameron Meredith, 107 and 108, but you got A-Rob, Michael Thomas, and 109, and Rex Burkhead and Deion Lewis.
No, I didn't make that trade. That's not the one I made. That was the offer.
I got you.
That was the first offer I got.
That one's pretty close for me still.
Well, now that at that time I already didn't believe in A-Rob, and I didn't think Michael Thomas would repeat what he did year 1. So I rejected that one, even though everything told me that I should take it. Like,
that's a good trade now.
Yeah, it is a good trade.
Now it's a good trade.
Also, what people forget, speaking of you saying that you thought you should take A-Rob just because the value is there. People forget fantasy is supposed to be fun. Like, if you don't want a player on your team, you don't have to take them just because the value is good.
I want a team full of players I hate.
I know we're all like, quote unquote, sharks or whatever it is, because we all write for sites and whatever, but like, I still play fantasy to have fun. I probably shouldn't let people know this, but I do not draft or trade for any Cowboys players on any team because I fucking hate them and I don't want to root for them on Sunday.
Speak for yourself on being a shark and writing for reputable sites.
Right, no kidding.
Quote unquote shark, because I don't consider myself one.
I spoke about the worst part of my game, which is rookies, but the best part of my game is paying my league fees to donate to somebody else.
Jason is hashtag bad at fantasy football. Okay, let's move on to the next thing I want to go into. Actually, is what was this about? What I was talking about, Amir Abdullah, and maybe potentially of being used inappropriately by coaches. I wanted to talk about the guy who I actually think is potentially one of the biggest winners from the draft, but nobody seems to be talking about him, and that's Jerick McKinnon. because sure, he got signed to that big contract to San Francisco as a free agent, and then there were a lot of people that maybe tried to poke holes in it and say, okay, well, it's a bunch of money up front and then one, and sure, that makes sense because they want him to prove it. Um, but everybody was also saying, yeah, they're going to draft a running back to go with him, and then they didn't. He's the only person really there. They said he's going to be in the Devontae Freeman role in the Shanahan offense, um, but I even tweeted out something about this a couple days ago, asking like, how come nobody's talking about this? Everybody was all in love with him before the draft, and now nobody's looking at the fact that nobody got drafted to get paired with him, and he really doesn't have a lot of people with him that are scary. They have potential maybe, but like, where do you guys land on Jerick McKinnon? And I know personally, I am a truther for him. I've had him on my roster, a bunch of rosters for a long time, and I'm probably overvaluing him right now. I'm valuing him at maybe his ceiling, but I'm also really hopeful that he can reach that ceiling especially because he's gonna get volume. They're gonna give him a chance to do what they want him to do, and maybe he fails miserably, but I mean it's there for the taking right now, and he really has limited to no competition. So I'm gonna throw to Jason on first on this one. So what do you think, Jason?
Yeah, so it's kind of known from listening to this that I don't care for Jerick McKinnon, but man, are you right? There's just nothing stopping him there from just getting a ton of carries. I mean, if Carlos Hyde can do it, then Jerick McKinnon should be able to do it, right? But I don't know. It's I don't see him as a RB1, but I could see him as a high RB2 in that scoring range.
There's also Coach speak that they're going to split him out wide too on snaps, which
Oh my god.
yeah, I'm sure everyone's just losing their pants over.
But like Derek said, I don't see any talk about it at all. Like nowhere.
I've seen talk, but that's only because my friend Zach is a big Jerick McKinnon truther and has been for years, and I think he wrote an article about DLF about Jerick McKinnon. So I see it a lot. Actually, I've seen it a lot this offseason. I saw it more pre-draft, and
that's all I'm saying is the pre-draft stuff was all there because he was the signing, and then but everybody also was tempering that, saying like they're going to draft
people have definitely been quiet about it since the draft happened. I agree with that.
It should be amplified, but now it's quiet. People aren't trying to give away their secrets, is what it is, probably.
I also think it's one of those things where it's almost like there's this concept in social media of like being, I forget what the exact term is, but you're overwhelmed with like how much information is out there.
Right.
And I think that's happening a bit where like people are still trying to digest the rookie landing spots. So they're not really quite as ready to talk about what it means for the veterans yet, even though that has an impact on the rookies themselves. So it's kind of circular. But I think everyone's just really focused on rookies at the moment, and it'll come back around probably.
But there's been talk about, okay, Marlon Mack is a winner from this draft because he didn't really draft anybody. But like literally, the person who had the most pre-draft hype was Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah.
And you really can't make an argument other than they pounded the table for Joe Williams, and Matt Breida's there and he's an okay receiver maybe. Like you can't make an argument to say that he is at least not going to get the chance.
Oh no, he is, and they have an out after next year too. By the way, after the season, they can get out of his contract for basically nothing.
Exactly, and sure, he may crash and burn. He may be the biggest obstacle is himself, but like he literally has the opportunity to potentially become. I don't know. I want to say his ceiling is the RB1, but I mean I do think that that's possible because he'll get carries and he'll get catches because there's literally no competition there. But I think his floor, and I'd be totally happy with this, is being RB15. Like I think that's totally feasible.
God damn.
Yeah, that's a little a little too hot or high for me.
I wish I had more Jerick McKinnon I could trade you.
Well, I'm not going out to try and buy him because I feel like his price is probably too high. But I've had offers in leagues where I have him that are just totally ridiculous. Like people trying to give me Josh Doxson for him.
That's part of the reason I would sell, by the way. Not in that case. I wouldn't sell him for Josh Doxson.
Right.
But with all, or at least when all the pre-draft hype was happening, I would have tried to sell him because people were like almost paying Barkley-esque prices for him. And Barkley, I do not think he is RB1 overall potential. I do not think Jerick McKinnon has. I think he could be an RB1 if everything breaks exactly right for him. But I see him more as a high end RB2 this season with occasional RB1 weeks.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he had 4 or 5 RB1 weeks in Minnesota last year after the Dalvin Cook injury, and he's got more opportunity now in San Francisco. So
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. And like I said, I'm admittedly a truther of him. I've had him on a ton of rosters since the beginning, and I'm probably too high on him. But I'm totally pricing him at the ceiling. In pre-draft, the leagues where I owned him, I was only getting offers of maybe like the 108. There was no way I was selling for that just because I was like I am believing in the hype because I believed it before. Um, but I realize that there's a chance. I think I only have one, 2, maybe 3 out of 6 rosters, but there's a chance that I crash and burn with him. But especially because they didn't draft anybody, I have to believe that he's going to get at least 200, 250 carries. And Carlos Hyde had what 58, 60 receptions with them last year, and
That sounds right.
McKinnon is a way better receiver, so I could see him easily having 75 to 90 receptions plus 200, 250 carries. Like if he hits that, of course he's an RB1, isn't he? Like, yeah, like
If he hits that, yeah.
Right.
But yeah, so it's interesting. I think it's also like it depends on your play style. So even though I say Juju is an eventual wide receiver one and you should go out and acquire him, I don't tend to be that risky. I tend to miss out on the guys like Michael Thomas or Odell Beckham or whatever before they hit their peak value because I want guys with like quote unquote proven track records. So I don't tend to buy high on guys. And because of that, I'll probably miss out on Jerick McKinnon entirely.
Well, I'm not advocating you go buy him right now because his price is too high. I only have him in a few places because I got him when he was a 3rd round rookie pick kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah. And you want to see those guys come to fruition. I'm sure people who got Stephon Diggs as a 4th rounder and Devonta Freeman as a 3rd or 4th rounder are still living it up.
Well, and speaking of Devonta Freeman, like when they mentioned that he is in the Devonta Freeman role, initially when I heard that Shanahan said that, I was like, well, he's a small satellite back. He's nowhere near that. He is only 1 inch smaller and 1 pound smaller than Devonta Freeman. Like they are literally the same size.
Yeah, he's also an athletic freak. He tested very well at the combine.
Yeah, so that doesn't mean their play style is the same, but I mean in terms of physicality and build, they're very similar. So it's not unreasonable to think he could do what Devonta Freeman does, and he's in that same style of offense. So that's all of the things that I'm looking at to say that like it surprised me to find out that they were the same, basically the same height and weight, at least based on Roto World's stats. But yeah, I don't know. I'm high on him. I'm not buying him, but I'm certainly not selling him for less than market value right now.
What would you sell him for?
I honestly don't know because I haven't gotten any good offers for him, and I haven't tried to put him out there to sell him.
I'm gonna make up a fake trade game right on the spot and see if I can nail what you would trade Jerick McKinnon for. So I will offer you. Let me think about this real quick.
Keep in mind, he just said he's the RB1.
No, I said he could be his ceiling.
He said he could be. I will offer you, and this is probably going to be, I'm going to guess it's going to be an overpay. I will offer you the 104 and the 201 and the 203 for Jerick McKinnon.
Yeah, I'd probably take that.
Would you take the 104 straight up? Did I overshoot it?
I don't know if I would take the 104 because I think that's about where I have him valued right now. So if you did the 104 and the 201, I think I would probably take that. But if you did the 104, 201, and 203,
Yeah, the 203 just felt like if I say this, he's just gonna click accept.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much, because like if
I was
if you-
surprised how fast he said yeah.
well, I believe in him,
It
but
just
I
goes
was
to show everyone has a price.
well, I was just thinking about it. I was like, okay, in this draft right now at the 104, I'm getting someone of Michelle Chubb, Geis, Penny Jones, one of those guys, and then at the 201, I'm probably getting a Cortland Sutton, maybe one of those running backs, and the 203, like maybe one of those running backs, and if you're talking super flex,
Yeah,
I
that'd
could
probably
actually
be.
get-
Oh, in Superflex, that'd be a complete overpay for
Well,
Jarek McKinnon.
yeah. So, but okay, one QB league. That even still in a one QB league, I would take that for sure. But I think there's a lot of leagues that the leagues that I own him in. I don't think there's a chance that if I offered him for the 104, I'd probably get laughed at.
Just to clarify, I would never make that trade. I would never offer the 104 plus for Jarek McKinnon. But I wanted to see what I could
Good to
get
know.
you to say yes to.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would say yes to that. Okay. Well, I feel like we're running kind of long here. I don't know what our time's at, so we maybe don't have to talk about everything. But maybe the last thing. Do you guys want to talk a bit about auctions, or do you want to just talk about the last thing about who is a veteran buy that you're looking to buy this year?
It's up to you guys. I'm here for whatever you want to do.
Let's talk a little bit about auctions, because
Okay.
I don't know if we had started already when I said I absolutely hate auctions, but I think it's just because I'm so bad at them. Like sometimes I'm like, okay, just kind of save up money right away. Once the high end players are off, then I can get a bunch of value or whatever. And then I'll end up with extra money or something like that. Or I'm aggressive and I'm like, okay, I have a third of a team. Now what? And I'm like, but I just can't find a sweet spot with auctions. I don't know.
What do you? So Bobby, I know you recently did your first auction in the Beat Bobby League, dedicated specifically.
It's now called Wreck Bobby League, or Bobby Gets Wrecked. It's changed a few times.
Either way, it's dedicated to you. So
yeah, that's courtesy of John Bosch.
Well, of course, this podcast is sponsored by John
Bosch. I had another auction actually. It's my first startup auction, just to clarify, because in Kitchen Sink our dispersal was an auction.
Oh,
but
yeah, okay.
I also had a co-owner, and like I just felt really dumb and anything. I'd be like, "Do you think we should bid on this guy and do this much?" I'd be like, "No, Bobby, like get the fuck out of here." I'm like, "All right, I'll just go fuck myself then." Sorry if you can't curse on your podcast.
No, you're fine.
No,
you can apologize to Kevin and Sal and Steven after.
But yeah, sorry guys. But the startup auction was definitely a different animal, and it was also my first time being in a 14-team league in a while, so I'd gotten really used to the 12-team size. So, and then there was the added in wrench of, oh, you don't have to leave the auction with a full roster. And then John started bidding everybody up, as well, particularly quarterbacks, to drive the prices up. And then I would go with one strategy and go, oh, I should just hold on for my money for later. But oh no, what if I don't end up with a quarterback? Quick, jump on the last ship that's heading out. Oh, it's Cam Newton. Do you even really like Cam Newton? Doesn't matter. Bid 200 plus on him. And we were talking about this, I think, before recording, but I get the point of auction. I get the point that everyone has a fair shot at every player and whatever. But it doesn't, and I talked to John about this a bit too, it doesn't tailor itself to my style of play, which is I think it either rewards the people who are incredibly risky or the people who are incredibly patient. It doesn't reward at all the people who are in the middle. If you're in the middle, you're going to be screwed in the auction. And so if you're like occasionally willing to be risky, but you're generally pretty patient, if you try to do both, you're going to be screwed. If you're the other way around, you're going to be screwed. And so I like to come in with a strategy into snake draft, and you can have strategy in auction, but you kind of have to adjust on the fly. And it's just, I don't know, there's something about it in my head that like doesn't quite add up to how I would prefer to do a draft. I'm not going to say no to auction drafts, but it's not my preference.
And so, Jason, you said the reason that you hate auctions is just because you're bad at them,
right?
And nothing more. Like you're just bad at auctions.
Pretty much. I just whatever strategy I go for, the right way is the other way.
And see, and like this is, I'm on the opposite spectrum of you guys right now. Since I've started doing kitchen sink and pigs auctions, and I understand that pigs auctions are more like what this Rec Bobby League is like, where there's multiple teams. You don't have to leave with a full roster, multiple copies. Like
We don't have
pig-
multiple copies. That was the one thing that helped me a little bit, at least.
Yeah. So, but either way, like the biggest thing that I like about them, and it's made me think about auctions in a different way, is that I think the single most important thing about doing an auction draft is being flexible with your strategy. Like I've heard a ton of podcasts through DLF, the new Auctionable Events podcast, like various things that talk about auction strategy, and you got to go in with budgets, and you got to do this and like have a plan.
Yeah, no,
I think that's actually one of the most ways that hamstrings you.
I agree with that.
You need to be flexible, because if you're in a snake draft and you're in a pick and it comes to you and your guy's gone, you only have an option of drafting somebody that you think has the most trade value at that point that you can trade out of, or trying to trade down, which is not always easy depending on your league mates and what's going on. But if you're in an auction and you get bid off a guy that you want, you can look at the whole board, and depending on the format, whether it's proxy, non-proxy, you can just adjust your strategy, go after a different player, make a trade. It's way more flexible to do what you want to do, and get another guy in a similar tier or the same tier for the same or less price, than the guy that you got bid off of, if you reach your ceiling. So I think no matter what strategy you go into the auction with, I think the single most important thing about an auction is being flexible with your strategy and knowing that you can adjust at any point. Because once you get bid off that person that you really want to win, like if you go in to a rookie auction in a super flex league right now saying like I must win Baker Mayfield, but then that copy goes way above your percentage, because say maybe you go into it and you say like I only want to spend 20% of my budget on him max, and then he goes to 22%, and you have to decide, do I want to go to 23 even though I said only I wanted to go to 20? You need to be able to make that, or pivot to look at the board and say like, well, maybe I can get Darnold for 17% and I can live with that. Or
Yep. Yeah, I was not able to do that primarily because it was my first time, but I agree with that. I also think, honestly, I think for both drafts, you have to be flexible. And I probably say that as someone with more experience. I realize when you're experienced, it's helpful to try to come up with a strategy. But even in a snake, if I see like, oh, my team really needs a running back right now, but like 10 running backs go before me, I'm not about to select a running back when it's going to be just selecting a running back for the sake of selecting a running back.
yeah, if you can get a DJ Moore, a Calvin Ridley, a Courtland Sutton at 110, 111, 112 kind of thing, because all the running backs are gone, that's the value's there.
Yep,
So
exactly.
yeah, it's like it's a combination of best player available and value based strategy. Like in any form of draft, you just need to be flexible in what you're doing. You don't have
Yeah,
to
and
go
I do
into it
agree you have to be more flexible in auction, and that's probably my issue with it. Is I fully acknowledge that sometimes I have like mental issues with adapting on the fly. So it's definitely something I can work on. I'm not with Jason where it's like I hate it and I'm bad at it forever. It's like it's not my preferred format, but if I practice it, I bet I'll get better.
I still give it a go at it.
Well, and I mean, I've only really done with Jason last year the Pigs 2 auction, which admittedly I can't remember what your team was afterwards, but then maybe your strength is
Really bad.
Well, but then you went and made like a million trades that were fantastic, and you were one of the best teams in the league, and still have one of the strongest rosters. So
Most points scored in the whole league.
Yeah, trades is where I make my value too. I like to think I'm pretty good at trading and getting good value out of trades.
So that's where it's important of knowing your strengths when you're approaching these leagues. If it's an an auction league, do the auction as best you can, and then make a bunch of trades afterwards. So yeah, auctions are fun though. Even if you hate them, I think you can still have fun with them. I would have to say, like,
I enjoyed it. I just didn't enjoy not sleeping because I was worried about clocks expiring overnight. That's like my main concern about auctions. I get it. Like especially with 16-hour clocks, you have all this time to bid. But
Right.
with money on the board, you don't know when stuff's going to be freed up. So like, just because I can't shut my brain off, I'd be up at like 2 or 3 in the morning bidding and like making stupid bids because I wasn't sleeping. So
Setting
I
alarms
feel
is what I was doing during the startups for pigs.
That was
Yeah, so-
revenge. That was revenge bidding, though. But see, the thing with that, Bobby, is that you have to know that, like, okay, that one's going to go off either overnight, or you have one that's maybe going to go off overnight. But if somebody bids up on it, then the clock resets. So it's not like you have to bid up on it immediately if somebody.
Oh, no, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, let's say a player's on the board and they're going for like $20, and I have $21, and another player on the board expiring around then, and then someone bids me up, and suddenly I have money for the player I like that's also expiring around the same time.
Right.
That's where I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay up until 3 in the morning because I need to see just in case this happens. That's probably not my favorite part. And I feel like when I'm in business school, I'm going to be like, either just no options, or I'll have to like tell my commissioners like the clock has to shut off at midnight and then like continue on from there.
Right.
Yeah, that's tough. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I think probably what I would do in that situation is, well, I guess if you already had your money tied up, then it's just like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. But if I wasn't sure if I wanted to bid on somebody, or if I wanted to just keep somebody on the clock, I would just put a bid in and.
I did that a bunch just to extend clocks, not even necessarily because I wanted to like win a player at that price. I just saw them going too cheap, and I went, "This clock needs to be extended. It's time."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm in the Pigs 3 rookie auction right now. I had, I don't know, maybe fifth or sixth highest cash going into it, and there's been a lot of people that I've looked at, and it's like, I'm okay if I win this guy, but this guy's going way too cheap, and I'm just gonna bid to extend the clock because they're not who I want at this moment in the draft. But if I win them, I won't be sad, and they're going too cheap. So
yeah, we had a lot of price enforcing and a lot of table talk in the Wreck Bobby League or Beat Bobby League or whatever it's being called these days.
Yeah, I'm having the issue, Bobby, that you're talking about, because I'm in 4 different drafts right now, I think, and I'm only logging in like maybe 4 times a day to check prices. And the first thing I do is look, okay, I am not even leading in any bids that I put in last time. And then I go to the winning auctions and I'm like, oh, wow, that guy went really cheap. This guy went really cheap. It would have been nice to, put a bid in for those guys, but you have to constantly watch it to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's tough. And I'm someone who tends to overthink pretty much everything I do anyway. So it just like, honestly, I'm not even kidding when I say it keeps me up at night. And I feel like fantasy should not keep you up at night.
Yeah, that's true. It's a fun hobby that you definitely shouldn't be losing sleep over, but it happens at times.
I'm thankful I don't have too many auction drafts.
All right, I think we can move on to probably our last question here, and it's more just for you guys, just a general. Is there any, since we're in the middle of peak rookie hype, is there any veterans out there that you're looking to buy right now that you think is going to have a good season you can get on the cheap?
I'm still trying to get Marvin Jones, and
I was literally just thinking Marvin Jones.
And as much as I don't like him, I've been sneaking in some Amir Abdullah lately.
What?
Yeah,
okay,
don't tell Derek.
I honestly.
Adam Thielen still going cheap?
No.
103 was the last I heard.
The Dynasty Wall Street discussion was like, at least in terms of the DTC value, he's the 103 area.
Yeah, I said I'd take him easily over the 103. I had an article about it.
Yeah. So no, I don't know. I don't know if you classify that as cheap, but I don't think.
Yeah, that's not cheap. That's really tough.
What are you paying for Marvin Jones right
now? Marvin Jones, I'd probably pay. It depends. If I really think I have a good shot at winning this year, I think I'd probably pay the 104 or 105.
Oh
wow. Okay.
That seems like I would snap accept that from him.
Yeah.
Like I agree that he's a good receiver as like a wide receiver 2-3 on your team, but I don't know. I don't think I would. For the running backs in this class right now, even though it's such a jumble and they all have terrible landing spots.
You know who's probably a good cheap acquire, and it's someone we already talked about on the show? is Demaryius Thomas.
He was going to be mine if you hadn't said that. That's what I would
Well,
say.
Jason sniped me, so I had to snipe you. That's the way
Yeah.
it works.
I like it.
That's fair. That's fair. I love DT, and I've looked at his numbers. Well, and okay, for our, as we mentioned to you, Bobby, before we recorded, we have a contractually obligated period where we have to mention Robbie Anderson. So from our discussions,
Hey, the arrest
past
warrants were wrong, though. He wasn't supposed to show up on that court date, so he's not dead yet.
Right.
Well, I don't think he's dead, but even still, he's decreased in value a lot. But like we had a big discussion around DT and Robbie Anderson, and like when I looked into DT's numbers, he was still getting between 8 and 12 targets a game last year. He played in a terrible offense, and yeah, he finished as, I think, I don't know, wide receiver 23 or something in PPR scoring. But again, that was in a terrible offense with awful quarterbacks, and he was still a productive receiver. I can't remember what his yardage totals were. Maybe
I think he had something like 900 or so.
Yeah, I was gonna say around 900 yards. If he has Keenum come in, who, even if Keenum is 75% of what he was last year, he's a way more competent quarterback than what they were trotting out there last year.
By the way, Keenum is my biggest vet winner of the draft, not Marlon Mack, but I always think of things from a quarterback perspective.
Yeah, no, and I, from a quarterback perspective, I agree with you, because they literally drafted nobody, and there's nobody.
And they gave him a bunch of weapons for the years that he'll be there.
Yeah, there's nobody that threatens him on their depth chart, because Simeon is not going to do anything. Paxton Lynch is all but done.
Is kind of intriguing.
Well, he's the dark horse, because yeah, he was Mr. Irrelevant last year, but there were a lot of people that were huge fans of him in terms of talent standpoint. It was just he had the off the field issues and injury issues. So, if he emerges in camp this year, that is the biggest threat to him, and maybe that's why they didn't draft a quarterback, because they think he could emerge. But even still, I think even if he does show progress this year, Kelly could be their next year quarterback, and Keenum is still this year, probably, even if they're terrible. But I think that their offense is going to be way more functional this year than it was, just because Keenum is behind center. But I have to circle back here, and Jason, is why the hell, like, I am an Amir truther, and I am off his train entirely.
We don't have to go back.
I want to know, why the hell are you on him?
I think that having a second running back there that maybe splits the load with him will actually help him. And I think, unlike what Bobby thinks, I think they give him a ton of chances, and they're just going to keep doing it. So I think that he might actually be all right this year.
Oh, wow.
And I, like, people like you are giving up on him. So
yeah,
maybe I can sneak him in there for cheap.
Well, now's the point where you could probably give a low-end third. I bet you there's leagues that can get him on a waiver wire. There might be a chance, like maybe not, but he's one of those guys that would be end of the roster, potential roster clogger that people are debating cutting for some of the rookies that are coming in, specifically like Kerryon Johnson. Like he could be waiver wire fodder right now, that you could get him for free. And if you're right, I guess you're right. But I don't know. I've lost all hope. Well, I think that was a pretty good show. We had to get some good topics there. So thanks for coming on, Bobby. It was really awesome to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. You and I have been talking for, I don't know, a few months now. I think I remember following you around after the time that DLF brought you on as a writer, and
that's pretty much when everyone did. Before that, I didn't exist. I popped into existence the moment DLF announced me as a writer.
Yeah, but we've been talking about having you on since pretty much around that time. So it's awesome to finally get you here. But why don't you tell everybody where we can find you?
Sure, you can find me on the Afterburners pod. I always forget that I need to plug my own podcast again now, but on the Afterburners pod, which we drop weekly with my co-hosts Sam and Mike. You can also find me on Dynasty League Football, 2 quarterbacks, and I am a draft day consultant with Draft Day Consultant Inc.
Awesome. And we are at Gutfields Pod on Twitter. You can follow Jason at Jason Tran. I am Derek, and you can follow me at the FFRX. And you can find our podcast very intermittently in the off season on the Falafel House feed. We're on iTunes. I think they're on all the other major podcast feeds. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and it was a really good time.
I'm starting to feel better about football coming up.
Yes,
I will admit that.
I was about to say, you guys are there intermittently. If Jason decides he wants to come back after this episode, he might be like, nope, I'm done.
I told Derek I'm definitely doing this season, so we don't have to worry about I'll be back in full swing soon enough.
Jason's Brett Favring me across the board.